Howdy everyone, my name's Nate with Bosco John Design Co. and today we are going to talk about mirror alignment with the Monport 40 watt machine. So we're going to go through all the important things to know about mirror alignment. I'm going to show you how this laser works and talk about all the things. So let's get into it. The first thing that we're going to look at is the tube in the back of the machine, and in every CO2 laser engraver machine there's going to be a tube similar to this. Like I said, this is the Monport 40 watt, and how this works is there is CO2 gas that is inside of this tube. There is an electrical current that goes through and ignites the CO2. All of that reaction that happens is focused into the end of this laser tube and hits this first mirror in the back, which is the very first mirror we're going to look at as we start this alignment. But that's pretty much how the power is created. In bigger machines, this tube is longer and has more power inside of it. So that is kind of the basics of how the laser in the back works. So now we'll go into mirror number 1. So what we're looking at here is mirror 1 of 3 in this laser engraver, and the first thing that we're going to check here is we're going to power on the chiller and the laser, and we are going to do a test pulse from the laser tube, which is the button that I'll show here in a bit, and we're going to see where this laser is hitting on this mirror. The most ideal situation is that the beam from the laser tube is hitting the center of this mirror or very, very close. We just want to make sure it's hitting the mirror, and if we can get it close to the middle, that's great. So I'm going to put some tape over this mirror and we're going to give it a shot. So the first thing we're going to do, and hopefully you can hear me over the fan of the chiller, but what we're going to first be doing is sticking a piece of tape over this mirror, and we're going to kind of press around the circle so that we can see where the actual mirror is at. And then we're going to come over to this knob and turn it way down. I have it turned it way up right now. So we're going to turn it all the way down and kick it up just a little bit, and we're going to hit the pulse button until the laser fires. Okay, so I have the dial turned to maybe 3 o'clock. And I made a pulse, you can see in the mirror hopefully. And it might be hard to see on the camera, but it is in the center of the mirror. So that's what we're looking for. So we're going to take this tape off. And if you needed to adjust your mirror, if it's not in the center, you do have a couple options. You can move this structure back and forth, either this way or this way, by loosening some of these screws down in here. If you don't have to do it, I would recommend not doing it, but if you have to do it, then that's the way to adjust it. So we're going to clean off this mirror because there's probably a little bit of residue on it, and then move to mirror 2. So what I'm using to clean the mirrors is this 70% isopropyl rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip. So all I'm going to do is get the end of this Q-tip wet, scrub the mirror a little bit, and then take the dry end of the Q-tip and wipe it off, and that'll be what I do to clean the mirrors. Alright, so the important thing to know here is, 1, that this is mirror 2. We're back here looking at mirror 1, and one of the mistakes that I see most people make right away is they think that to adjust how the beam hits mirror 2 is that you adjust these knobs, but that is not the case. So in order to get this mirror aligned, we have to twist the knobs on mirror 1. So make sure you understand that first, otherwise nothing will happen and you'll get your laser way out of whack. So we are currently testing on mirror 2, but we are going to be twisting the knobs on mirror 1. The first position that we're going to have the laser at is all the way in the back, so that we're going to call this the close position. So this is where the mirror 1 and mirror 2 are at their closest proximity. After we make the pulse here, we're going to move it away, all the way up front, and that's going to be our far position. And we're going to do another pulse, and we're going to see where the dots land and make adjustments from there. So as you can see, we made our first pulse up close. We're going to move this away and do the second pulse to see where our alignment is. You can see that it's low and to the left, and what most people want to do right away is try to get that dot towards the center of the mirror. And I think that's one of the mistakes that most people make. And before you make any adjustments, we want to always take a second pulse from far away, because all we're trying to do is overlap the dots. We're not necessarily trying to get it in the center of the mirror. Most people think from other videos that talk about mirror alignment that we're trying to get it in the center of the mirror, and if we can do that, that's great. But on these 40-watt lasers, there's not that much adjustment that you can make to physically move the mirrors. And so all we're trying to do is get the dots to land on the mirror and land on top of one another. So I'm going to push this away into the far position and do another pulse. Okay, so it's hard to see on camera, but I did do the second pulse. It's not too far off, but it is a little off, and so we're going to make, I'm probably going to take another pulse reading, because I think the laser is a little too hot. It needs to be turned down a little bit for our pulses, so I can see the two dots better. But I did make the second pulse, and we are off just a little bit, so a minor adjustment is needed. So we switched to blue tape because it's a little bit easier to see pulse marks. And we pulsed the close and the far, and this mirror does appear to be pretty well aligned. So we're going to move on to the third mirror. I'm thinking this third mirror is a little bit out of alignment, so I'll talk through which knobs we're going to turn and so on and so forth for the third mirror. So now we're looking at the third mirror. We did clean off mirror 2, so make sure you do that before you move on to mirror 3. We put some blue tape on mirror 3's input hole, so we're going to make a couple pulses. The first pulse is going to be the near, or the close one, which is the back left position. And then we're going to move it to the front right and do another pulse to see where we're at. Alright, so as you can see, we are way off on this second mirror shooting into the third mirror. And so we are going to be adjusting the knobs on mirror 2 to get these to align much better. We are mostly off on a horizontal basis, and so I will be showing a graphic on which knobs are which, and I'll show you how we adjust this. So we're looking at the 3 knobs on this mirror, and since our dots are misaligned horizontally, we're going to be looking at what I'll reference as knob A, which is the knob that's in this top corner. So we have A, B, and C. A is for horizontal adjustment, B is for diagonal adjustment, and C is for vertical adjustment. So right now we just need to go with A, and this is where you just kind of have to imagine in your head how this laser is functioning. And so since my far shot was to the right, I need to bring it to the left, which basically means that I need to turn knob A counterclockwise so that the mirror leans in this way. And if we screw out the bolt there, that'll allow the mirror to turn that way. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make an adjustment, do a couple pulses, and see if we can get this better aligned. So what I'm doing here is I have one hand on the pulse button and one hand on the knob that I'm screwing. So I'm gonna unscrew the bolt, so go counterclockwise, hit the pulse button a couple times until it gets, so you can see it starting to show up there. We still need to go more, so I'm gonna twist it a little bit more, do another pulse, and you can see we're getting closer. I'm gonna do one more small turn, closer, it seems like there we go. So we're pretty much on top of it. We're going to put a new piece of tape on and do this again. So here you can see that our two dots are much closer. We still have to go to the left a little bit more, so we're going to do a small adjustment on the knob and do another pulse. Do a small adjustment, pulse again. Okay, so we're pretty much over the top of it. Now the next thing that we need to do is go vertically down, and so this is the C knob that I was referencing earlier, and to go down we need to do the same thing. We need to go counterclockwise so that the mirror tilts down, because that's the direction we need to go. And we're getting close, so we're going to do a new piece of tape one more time. So it might be a little hard to see, but the dots are overlapping each other right now. So the very last thing that we're going to do is put a piece of tape on the bottom of the nozzle to make sure it's coming straight down through that and not hitting on the sides at all. So the last thing that I'm doing is, this is probably the second to last thing I guess that I'll show you before we give it a test run. But I'm just making sure that the laser beam is coming straight down the nozzle and hitting this tape somewhere in the center, because if it's not, that can ruin the quality of the cut. The very last thing we'll do is we'll do a pulse on all four corners of the laser to make sure everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to do this quick and we'll move to the four corner test next. So we got something there. You kind of have to look at it in the right light, but it appears that it's a pretty good dot. Very last, I guess, I keep saying the very last, but the next thing that I'm going to do is that I have an aftermarket laser head on this. So I'm just going to remove the lens and make sure that's clean. Probably clean that out a little bit as well. So our lens is pretty dirty, so it definitely needs a cleaning. When you're cleaning this, you want to make sure that you don't drop it. Make sure that if you do take it out, you put it in the same way, because there is a right way and a wrong way. There's an up and a down to put that in, so you have to be careful for that. We're going to use the same Q-tip and alcohol to clean this. I'm not going to take it out, I'm just going to Rub a little bit of alcohol on it. Seemed to be a little dusty. And then I'm going to use a Q-tip. So you also don't want to touch the lens with your finger, because your oils in your hand can degrade the lens a little bit. So I'm going to hold a Q-tip over it, go towards the bottom, and clean the bottom of the lens while putting pressure on the top of the lens so it doesn't pop out. Dry it off with the dry side of the Q-tip. And we'll put it back on. Alright, so here we are with a fully aligned laser. What I did off camera is I did a ramp test, and I'll probably just make another video specifically on ramp testing. But what you have to figure out is your focal length. What's the most effective focal length for your laser? And we found out that it's about a half an inch from the top to the base of the bed. And so we're propping up all of our stuff with 2 layers of 1/4 inch plywood. So we got everything dialed in, we got our powers all dialed in, powers and speeds. We're going to show you what should happen with a properly aligned laser with a simple circle. So it should drop right down if you have a void for it to drop down into. Let's see if I can get this out. So that's the circlet just cut out. 3mm plywood Baltic birch. Our speed and power that we used was 475 millimeters per minute with a 40% power. 1 pass.